According to the combat report from U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, forward forces have just completed a highly kinetic interception operation. Target neutralized, the Iranian-flagged container ship designated Touska. The reason for activating the rules of engagement, ROE? Intelligence and AIS data showed that the Touska had not lost control. The crew proactively accelerated, ignoring all hailing protocols on the VHF band, determined to breach the naval blockade perimeter. In surface warfare doctrine, deliberate evasion and refusal to comply with the Navy's order to stop is no longer a civil maritime violation, but an act of hostile escalation.
Observing the declassified footage. Facing an evasively maneuvering target, the guided missile destroyer USS Spruance, DDG-111, escalated interception measures. After radio warnings failed, the order to open fire was approved through the chain of command. U.S. forces executed disabling fire, aiming precisely at the Touska's engine room section to completely neutralize the ship's dynamics. The nature of the event needs to be recalibrated. This is not an administrative boarding procedure. The use of a kinetic strike on a commercial vessel underway is an extremely high-risk tactical decision. The Touska incident establishes a new precedent. The phase of presence deterrence has ended, giving way to an era of maritime space control through live combat fire.
To decode the nature of the event, we need to break down the operational mechanism of a Maritime Interdiction Operation established by CENTCOM. In modern naval doctrine, a blockade is not about stretching warships across the sea. It is the establishment of a multi-layered integrated C4ISR network. As soon as the Touska entered the identification zone, the Pentagon sensors established tracking parameters. The escalation of force protocol was immediately activated, querying AIS parameters, broadcasting warnings on VHF channel 16, and demanding the engines be stopped. When a target deliberately evades and ignores warnings from a U.S. destroyer, it strips itself of civil immunity. The deliberate attempt to puncture the MIO net is a direct violation of the rules of operational maritime space management.
Why did the Touska crew accept this risk? From an operational intelligence perspective, this was not an impulsive act. Iran's maritime forces and their proxies frequently apply gray zone tactics, conducting kinetic tests to measure the reaction time and limits of the U.S. military's rules of engagement, or ROE. They calculated that the pressure of international maritime law would tie the Pentagon's hands in applying lethal force, thereby opening an escape loophole. That was a fatal miscalculation in evaluating the tactical situation. The response from the USS Spruance is a textbook demonstration of the mobility kill concept.
The commanding officer, CO, faced a strict ROE dilemma. Sinking the target would violate UNCLOS and trigger a chain reaction spiraling out of control. Instead, disabling fire was deployed, locking directly onto the engine room section at the stern. The objective of the fuselage was not to destroy the hull, but to collapse the entire propulsion system. By neutralizing maneuvering capability without causing mass casualties, the USS Spruance completely deprived the Touska of its kinetic energy. This strike immediately established a tactical security perimeter, creating the prerequisite for special forces to deploy the Visit, Board, Search and Seizure (VBSS) protocol. Any effort to exploit a commercial cover to penetrate the blockade net was utterly broken by fire discipline.
The asset executing the interception order was the USS Spruance DDG-111, a Flight 2A variant Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. In a gray zone combat scenario, the Spruance's deterrence power lies not in its missile launch cells, but in its Aegis combat system. It turns the ship into a complete C5I complex. The moment the Touska aided, the ANSPY-1D phased array radar locked onto its kinematic parameters, rendering all the target's maneuvering efforts meaningless on the tactical display. The challenge posed to the commander? Execute disabling fire into the engine room of a moving target, amidst a heavy swell without causing total hull loss or detonating the cargo.
The 5-inch Mk-45 naval gun carried too great a risk of collateral damage. The optimal tactical choice at this point was the 25mm Mk-38 Mod 3 machine gun system. The kill chain was almost automated. The electro-optical infrared sensor system, combined with the ballistic computer, continuously measured and compensated for the pitch and roll of both ships. Bursts of high-explosive incendiary with tracer HEIT armor-piercing rounds were embedded precisely into the engine compartment. Propulsion was completely eliminated. The Touska officially fell into a dead-in-the-water state, losing the ability to maneuver. In that very split second, the VBSS protocol for a non-compliant boarding target was activated.
In the air, the MH-60R Seahawk helicopter established an overwatch zone, continuously sweeping the Touska's deck with its FLIR infrared sensor to share target data. On the sea surface, RHIBs brought the Special Forces team alongside the ship. There was no room for individual heroism. The assault formation deployed according to close quarters battle CQB principles, conducting synchronized penetrations with mutual support, seizing control of the bridge, and disarming the crew in strict compliance with the rules of engagement. An overwhelming operation based entirely on combat discipline and a seamless chain of command.
Beyond the scope of surface warfare, the Touska interception activated a second front: Information Operations, I.O. CENTCOM's proactive declassification and publication of tactical data is not an ordinary transparent media move. This is a strategic deterrence spearhead. The message the Pentagon is sending to Tehran and its proxy network is immediate. The naval blockade perimeter will be enforced with live combat fire, completely eliminating the margin of error of the gray zone tactics that merchant vessels often exploit.
However, through the legal lens of the UNCLOS Convention, the use of disabling fire and boarding a ship flying the flag of a sovereign state in disputed waters pushes the line of engagement close to the threshold of an act of war. Washington has just established a new security precedent, accepting legal risk to prioritize the right of kinetic intervention. The chain reaction effect immediately slammed into the global logistics network. Maritime intelligence institutions like Ambray or the Lloyd's of London insurance market were forced to reset risk parameters. War risk premiums for commercial vessels transiting through maritime choke points will undoubtedly be adjusted upwards.
More seriously, when analyzing the security doctrine of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, the core principle is symmetrical retaliation whenever national assets are seized. A cycle of retaliatory strikes targeting Western Allied-flagged commercial vessels operating near the Strait of Hormuz is the most highly probable scenario. The escalation control mechanism in the Gulf has now officially been broken. Subduing the Touska does not close the incident file, but establishes a tactical inflection point on the escalation ladder. According to Iran's asymmetric warfare doctrine, the most realistic subsequent scenario involves swarm tactics using explosive-laden uncrewed surface vessels, USVs, or one-way attack UAVs, OWA UAVs. The targets are Western naval assets aimed at re-establishing the deterrence equilibrium.
The regional security architecture has been reshaped. The sea lines of communication, SLOCs, now lie entirely within the intersecting risk space between the U.S.'s MIO network and the adversary's anti-access area denial, or A2AD, zones. In summary, the Touska interception was not simply an independent blockade enforcement operation. It is a stress test for the escalation matrix using live combat fire. The Pentagon has re-established the red line, officially shifting the state of the maritime space from a tactical gray zone to an area of direct kinetic engagement.